Hello, beautiful. Today I am joined by cyclical strategist and menstrual educator, Cait. She is your gal for everything TMI and hormones. And I am just so excited for our conversation today because I feel like for so many, this conversation is so uncomfortable. And I know that even my mom still makes jokes of like, you're talking about periods? What? And it's because of how uncomfortable I was with them for so like 25 years of my life.
Mm.
So I'm very happy to have you here today because you make it feel just approachable and safe. So, without further ado, welcome Cait to your Body is Not the Problem podcast.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, and I totally get the whole not comfortable with it. Yes, I went to a Catholic school, so I didn't have a big menstrual education growing up.
Maybe it's a Catholic school thing because same here.
Oh
I
man,
did not start learning things until a lot later in life.
no.
So, to start, could you please tell us a bit more about you, your body image journey, and your menstrual journey?
Yeah, so it's actually really funny because I mean it's not funny, but I had my whole life I've struggled with body image, disordered eating, and it was like the one thing in my life that like it just always haunted me, you know? But it wasn't until I came across menstrual cycle and living with your menstrual cycle um that I really started to truly heal my relationship with my body. And through learning about the menstrual cycle and learning all about hormones and living in alignment with my menstrual cycle, it really felt like that aha moment, that missing puzzle piece I needed to cultivate like a more compassionate and loving relationship to my body. Because through tracking your cycle and learning about how your hormones fluctuate and how they impact us, it really empowers us to understand our bodies and to really appreciate this whole system that's happening inside of us.
Yeah, it's like for so long, at least for myself, I saw it as my body being against me. It's like, oh, great, like this again. And when you start working and like learning about your cycle, you're working with your body instead of against it. So I think it's
Exactly.
really cool how the two journeys kind of like combine for you.
Yeah, it I honestly find that healing my relationship to my body and myself was kind of like my purpose, put how I why I'm here on earth. And so that I can then go and help other people with that as well.
I love that so much. Okay. So for those who aren't aware, what is a menstrual cycle and what are the different phases?
Yeah. So the menstrual cycle, it should really be called the ovarian cycle because the entire purpose of the menstrual cycle is to ovulate. So our menstrual cycle, it's this rise and fall of hormones that allow us to ovulate because whether we like it or not, our bodies are trying to find a mate every single cycle. But really the menstrual cycle can be broken up into four different phases. We have menstruation, then we have our pre-ovulatory phase, our ovulatory phase, and our pre menstrual phase or our luteal phase. And how much detail do you want me to give?
Whatever you're willing to give. Because I mean, again, from my experience, Catholic school, I didn't learn a lot of this. So I feel like there's definitely some people listening to this who are like, please tell me everything because I actually have no clue.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So let's go deep then for a
Okay.
minute. So first we have menstruation. That's day one of our period, when we have a true, real bleed, when we have to use period products. And it's really helpful to think of the four phases of the menstrual cycle as seasons. So menstruation is winter. It's about hibernating. Our hormones are at their lowest levels, and it's really a time to like rest, stillness, surrender, and of course, we may also be experiencing menstrual pain, bloating, acne, and all that kind of stuff. And then we have our pre-ovulatory phase. So this is from the day after you finish your period. Um, up until ovulation, and this is spring, right? It's like we're coming out of winter. Our estrogen is slowly climbing, and with that we also feel maybe a little bit more confident, a little bit more motivated. It's like the flowers are starting to poke through the soil, if you know what I mean. And so here it's like we have more energy, we're feeling ourselves, and really the entire pre-ovulatory phase is preparing and approaching ovulation. So then we have ovulation, right? And here it's the summer of our cycle. And here it's, I like to think of ovulation as like that perfect day in summer where everyone heads to a park and you see everyone around you just having no care in the world, enjoying and being social and experiencing pleasure. And so that's what the summer of your cycle is all about. It's really a time to be embodied, and with this peaking estrogen you may feel more confident, higher energy, and more social. And then things take a turn. Things take a turn because in our premenstrual phase, that's about after ovulation all the way up until your period. So that's about 10 to 14 days. And our premenstrual phase, progesterone is dominant, and it kind of makes us want to slow down and nest. But about halfway through our premenstrual phase, our both estrogen and progesterone begin to decline, and with that, we we get it kinda get a reality check. We can also be a little bit more critical about ourselves, and this is when PMS symptoms, or if you experience PMDD, that also comes into the picture, and it can be a real struggle for people, but it's really about, like, we have a little bit less energy, a little more, critical, and then our whole cycle starts again when we start our period.
It was interesting because I put up a poll on my Instagram and everyone voted that their body image struggled the most during their luteal phase.
Yes, that makes sense.
So, for diving into the different phases of our cycle, then, and how it impacts our body image, I guess starting with the menstrual phase, since it's the beginning of the cycle, um, I guess what kind of things can someone typically possibly expect for like a fluctuation in their body image during that time?
Yeah, so when we're menstruating, I think if anyone menstruates, we know we might feel a little bit just more blah in our bodies, right? We're bloating, we're cramping, we may be having digestive issues. We might be puffier, our acne might be flaring up. And so when our hormones are low, specifically estrogen, we don't have as much we don't have as much serotonin being produced. And
Oh.
so when we're menstruating, we may experience like more body image. But on the flip side, if we're kind of cognizant about our menstrual cycle, our menstrual phase, and we kind of slow down, it can be also a really, really juicy time for self care and loving up on ourselves.
It's interesting that it's like the serotonin kind of drops too, because like that's literally the feel good hormone, right? And it's like,
Hmm.
oh, it just makes more sense. It's not an issue with your body. Your body is not the problem. Your body's
No,
doing some cool stuff on the inside. And it just so happens that instead of fighting it and working against your body, it's just being like, hey, can we slow down a little?
exactly.
Which is so
Exactly.
hard to do in this society.
Oh, the entire society is not built for us to thrive at all. Woohoo.
No.
Yeah, and then should I talk about the next phase? So, well, follicular and or sorry, pre-ovulatory and ovulatory kind of go together. So we'll
Okay.
kind of link them. But basically, after we finish our period, when estrogen starts to rise, we have more serotonin, we have more energy, and as estrogen rises, there's also studies that show that, especially during ovulation, you may notice you have clearer skin, you look more plump, your face may look more symmetrical, and that boost in estrogen is helping boost serotonin levels. So we're literally feeling better about ourselves. And so sometimes when you're ovulating, you may look in the mirror and be like, wow, like I am that person. Like I am that person. I am really, really attractive right now. Um and and it kind of the estrogen piece of it is just it's just really important to recognize how our hormones are impacting us.
Mhm. And is it maybe also, I guess, like, adding on top of that, because it's the estrogen is rising, it's like we're more in our feminine too? Like, we're more in that energy, I guess, rather than, like, the masculine energy or,
Yeah, could
um,
be. Could
like,
be.
it's
I think honestly, it's could be if you look at it from, like, a biological perspective, if our bodies, whether we want to have a family or not, our bodies are trying to mate. And so when we're ovulating, our bodies are trying to make us look more attractive so
mhm.
that we can potentially bring in a mate. And so that's I don't know. I don't know whether I like that or not. But I appreciate the ovulatory energy anyways.
Yeah, exactly. You can just get to enjoy that burst of energy.
Yeah.
And what I guess happens for those who maybe that's not what happens to them during their ovulation phase
Mhm.
and they're like their energy is down. What sometimes is like going on in their body or their hormones?
Mhm. It could be a multitude of reasons. It could be an excess of estrogen, so your body is producing too much estrogen, and high levels of estrogen may cause acne. It may cause bloating, lower energy. On the flip side, it could be a sign that perhaps we are not our nervous system is dysregulated, and so we haven't slowed down in our menstrual phase. We act like it doesn't exist. We go through our pre-ovulatory and ovulatory phase, and we're not getting those beneficial impacts because we may be teetering on burnout, or we're dysregulated, or we're not caring for ourselves. And so those are kind of red flags if we're not feeling the best when we're in our pre-ovulatory and our ovulatory phase.
Right, but so then embracing the other phases, it kind of
Exactly.
helps, and I think it's really interesting that you brought up the nervous system for it though, because I don't feel like that's a connection that a lot of us often make to our period. I feel like it's completely different
Yeah.
subjects. Do you mind expanding on the nervous system, please, when it comes to our menstrual cycle?
Yeah, so if we are in a state of fight or flight for, our waking hours, then we're experiencing a lot of cortisol. We have high levels of cortisol, which our hormones don't just they're not just individual things that are happening, right? Our bodies, all of the hormonal processes that are happening in our bodies are all interlinked. And so when we have high levels of cortisol being produced, that's going to dampen progesterone, or it's going to increase estrogen. And so when we are in this state of fight or flight, our hormonal process doesn't actually function the way it needs to. And if we are dysregulated, and if we are in constant states of stress, we can actually delay ovulation, and we may not even be ovulating at all because stress really impacts the menstrual cycle. Mhm.
And I guess if you're in fight or flight, like, your body probably isn't thinking about having sex or
Exactly.
having a baby if you're running away from a tiger, right? So I get that makes
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah, because it's like back in the day, if we were in a famine or if we were being chased by a bear, that's the common example, your
Mhm.
body makes the executive decision to say, probably not the best time to mate, probably not the best time to get pregnant. And so your body, even though it might just be replying to emails now or like having that conversation with your boss, or breaking up with someone, or whatever it is, your body makes that decision to stop ovulation. And so we can have some pretty wonky cycles in the society that we live in.
Mhm. Another side note, because you kept calling it the ovulatory phase. I also know it as follicular. Are they just, like, interchangeable, or is it
Yeah.
more correct to say pre-ovulatory?
I mean, I just so both are correct. The
Okay.
follicular phase is technically from day one of your period all the way up until ovulation. Um,
Oh, okay.
it's like two halves of the cycle. So we have our follicular phase from day one of our period to ovulation, and then our luteal phase from the day after ovulation until our period. Um, and so I find that it's a little bit easier for us to conceptualize the menstrual cycle if it's menstrual and then pre-ovulatory. So we're not ovulating yet is that time after, then ovulatory, and so on. Mhm.
Fair.
But
Okay.
both are right. Both are correct. You can say
Okay.
both.
Perfect. What are we looking at for the luteal phase then?
So once we ovulate, it can kind of be broken down into two different, there's like the mid luteal and the late luteal phase. And so in our mid luteal phase, we still may be feeling pretty good about ourselves if we have the correct amount or the enough progesterone being produced. It's actually a natural like anti-anxiety. And so that week after ovulation, you should be feeling pretty good. Because it's while it's making you kind of want to slow down and nest, it's also pretty soothing, or it should be. But cortisol levels, of course, they dampen the impacts of progesterone, which a lot of people do struggle in their luteal phase, and that could be a reason. But once your body gets wise that it's not going to or get pregnant, about halfway through that luteal phase, so about 7 days before your period, both estrogen and progesterone begin to decline. And with that, we have 150 different PMS symptoms that are being, that you may experience, right? And so typically in our pre-ovulatory and our ovulatory phase, we have less body image issues. But in our luteal phase, if we have any underlying body image stuff, if we have any underlying mental health stuff, physical, any like disorders, that gets exacerbated. It's like your luteal phase kind of sheds a spotlight on any underlying issues because we don't have our hormones to kind of, or our estrogen to kind of like make everything okay.
Right.
Mhm. And so a lot of people struggle in their luteal phase because when those hormones are dropping, um, it's just harder to deal with things, and there's less serotonin being produced at this time, and so you feel more sensitive to criticism, and like you're puffier, you may have acne, and so a lot of people experience body dysmorphia being heightened in this time. Actually in on TikTok, there's a bunch of viral videos about like the ugly phase people go through, and it's definitely when people are in the luteal phase.
Oh my gosh.
They're not
Oh,
actually ugly,
TikTok.
but you
Yeah.
know.
That brought me to my next question because obviously someone can be bloated at any time of the month, but is it more common for it to happen during the luteal phase? And why is it more
Yep.
common to happen then?
Yeah. So about, that like 3 to 7 days before your period and into your period, your body is producing something called prostaglandins, which is going to help contract your uterus to allow your period to happen. And prostaglandins also um, contribute to bloating. But and also, our digestive system slows down during this time. And it's kind of just we can retain more water during this time as well. So there's a lot of things that happen to allow bloating to happen.
Right. Is maybe it's like giving some grace then. That's like your
Exactly.
body's doing the best it can with what it has. Um
Mhm.
and also even like the stress part of that because I was just doing a program and I was learning that even when we're in like a low grade stress response, our digestion in some form shuts down.
Exactly.
And so it's like if you want to reduce the discomfort of bloating and things like that, it's like don't focus on the bloating itself, focus on maybe the stress, and that will also
Exactly.
impact the rest of your cycle.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
One question I thought of when I was creating these questions was wait a second, what is like, how does that change for those who are on hormonal birth control because they don't technically actually have a period and they don't ovulate?
Yeah. In terms of like body image, well, okay, first of all, it really depends on the individual and their experience on the pill.
Fair.
of course, when you're on hormonal contraception, you're not experiencing the phases of the cycle. And so, if you're someone who really struggles in their luteal phase, say you have premenstrual dysphoric disorder or PMDD, or you really struggle with PMS in your luteal phase, and you're noticing that your body image issues get really amplified during this time, you may find that the pill helps to lessen the severity of your body image issues or mental health um, struggles that you experience because your body's shutting down that the cycle, right? On the
Right.
other hand, um, because you aren't experiencing the beneficial impact or the beneficial effects of progesterone and estrogen, you may be actually missing out on these times in your cycle where you feel better about yourself. And so it's really highly individual. I'm not for or against birth control. I know for me, like this is for me, um, I definitely struggled a lot more with my body image on contraception. But again, it really depends on the person.
Yeah, I know for myself, like back in high school when I first started and I did like different ones, I was struggling so hard with PMS. And I mean, I would be still struggling with body image even if I hadn't gone on birth control at that age because of my mindset and things I was going through.
Yeah,
But it definitely felt like there was never a break from it. And it was just a
exactly.
constant. And it definitely changed as I got older and I started doing other options for birth control.
Yeah,
But so I guess it's just something that the listener can think about if they are on it or if they're not. It's like it helps to make an informed decision for you and your body.
exactly.
I hope that is all we're giving is just information for you to make the best decision for you. But it is interesting because I know for myself, I had no clue that I wasn't actually having a period
Yeah.
when I was on it. I was like,
Uh-huh.
excuse me, then what's happening? Like, I'm so
Withdraw
confused.
bleed. Yeah, yeah. I don't think that that hormonal contraception is inherently a bad thing. I just think, or I wish that people had more informed consent when we took it. I mean, I was on it for 10 years, but didn't actually understand what was happening.
Exactly. And it's like you open it up and it has the long paper of all the things. And I'm like, I'm invincible.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, maybe try reading it. I don't know. But again, totally up to you. I just thought that was a very interesting thing because, like, your hormones are going to be obviously doing different things if you're on it versus if you're not on it.
Mhm, mhm. Well, like, when you're on the pill, your body gets put on a steady state of both, like, synthetic versions of estrogen and progesterone, and so you're kind of instead of going on this, like, fluctuation of estrogen rises and falls and progesterone rises and falls, it's just a steady stream. So it's a almost kind of muted in a way,
Hmm.
but that could be good or bad depending on where you are at in your life and what you struggle with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think another huge way that our cycle can impact our body image is the amount of pain we can be in during, like, even the luteal phase and like going into the menstrual phase. Do you have any recommendations for reducing period pain and PMS?
Yeah. That's a good question. So, of course, I want to just preface this by saying that if you're experiencing pain that's interfering in your life, know that that isn't normal, and you should definitely be looking into why you are experiencing pain, because though period pain has been normalized, it's not necessarily normal. I mean, of course, some mild cramping, fine. But if it's really interfering in your life, definitely advocate for yourself in the doctor's office. But some things that are known to help are, of course, moving your body in ways that you enjoy. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to the gym or go to a HIIT class that you said you were going to go to, but it could be things like walking, yoga, stretching. Strength training is also really, really helpful. Taking supplements like magnesium, doing castor oil packs or heating pads. There's a company called Some Days, and they make really, really great cramp cream. I think the founders they had endometriosis, and so it's a product that a lot of people have found helpful. But in terms of not in terms of things that are not just like take this, do this, we may also want to be a little um we want to kind of look inwards and analyze your life a little bit. So like, are you resting? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you acting like your period doesn't exist? Because you'd be amazed at how much doing absolutely nothing can actually help with pain.
I went so long thinking that it was completely normal for periods to be painful. And I know I've seen it on social media so much that whenever someone says that, there's a whole bunch of people who are like, no, you're wrong. It's like, it's so normal for it to be painful. It's like,
It's not.
I I think it was my first period of 2021. I was so close to calling an ambulance because I
Oh
was
my
in so
goodness.
much pain at like 5 a.m. I was like, Graham, what do I do?
Oh,
And then from there, though, I was like, that was enough motivation for me to be like, okay, what do I actually have to do to listen to my body? Like, what was that trying to tell me?
exactly.
That night, I was severely dehydrated, which apparently makes cramps a heck of a lot
Of
worse.
course.
And then it was the first one of 2022, completely painless. I'm currently on my period. There were zero
Mm,
cramps. And it's like, it doesn't have to be painful, especially when it's like it's you don't want to be looking forward. You're not going to look forward to pain every single month. So you don't want to
no,
be in that state because to me that would stress you out even more and hence impacting your period every single month of like I don't want to be in pain. So it's like I'm going to do everything I can to almost fight against it, but then you're fighting against it and hence
exactly,
it's
exactly.
going to
That's
fight
the
against you.
cycle. It's a cycle because if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're always putting other people first, if you are acting like your period doesn't exist, your body is gonna show you. It's gonna make you rest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's like it's not easy to be patient with yourself and others when you're in pain. It's not easy to see your body as your friend when it's in pain. And so
Mhm.
working on having or even just reducing the pain of your periods can be so beneficial for your body image, but I made a list of some of the things that I did.
Ooh,
And
tell me.
so one, making sure I drink enough water was a big one. I also started drinking ginger juice
Mhm,
like the week leading up to my period instead of doing like Advil and Tylenol because I also think it's Advil can be less fun for period cramps. I think it's like the coating maybe on it.
mhm, mhm.
Feel free to research that, but I think it was Tylenol for some reason. I don't know why. I can't explain it, but it had um it would help you reduce the pain that you're physically feeling without adding to other symptoms. Um, I also like to have salmon once or twice
Mhm.
in my luteal phase for those B vitamins and omega
And
3
omega
fatty
3s.
acids.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, so that's my new tradition every month, which I love it because I'm like,
I
oh, I'm
love
gonna
that.
go to this place and they make the salmon so good, and then it's fun and it's very helpful. And then
Mhm,
the other thing is mindset, which it's not easy again when you're like you're expecting it to be painful, but I had to start telling myself, I was like, this time it can be different. This month it can be different. And because otherwise it's like I was almost constricting my body every time. It's like, okay,
mhm.
I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for the pain. It's gonna hit me. It's gonna hit me. And then I'm like, I'm so freaking stressed. It's like, of course it's gonna hit you.
Of
And
course.
it takes time because I had to then find the proof in each cycle, like, oh, it was a little less painful. It felt
Mhm,
better. And it's like,
mhm. Yeah.
don't give up on it.
Yeah, menstrual taking care of your menstrual cycle and thus your body is a slow process. It's not something that happens overnight. It can take up to 3 months to even see the impact of the work that you're doing. And I really liked what you said about mindset because I'm at a place now where I look forward to my period because I know that during my period, I'm going to rest. I'm going to really take care of myself. And I know that during menstruation, I can access my intuition a lot easier. So I feel creative and I can kind of course correct and allow menstruation to be this like powerful portal to for my personal growth and in my work and my business.
Isn't it crazy? I feel like if you asked younger you that, they'd probably be like, I'm never gonna be looking forward to my period. Like, are you okay?"
When I was on the pill, I literally did not get it because was the person that just skipped it the whole time. So I wouldn't get my period ever, really.
It's so cool though how just like in everything with everything in life, our opinions and our mindset can change on things, and things don't have to be painful, and they can change, and your body
Mhm.
isn't working against you, it's trying to work for you.
Mhm.
A question that came in from my community for you is, how can you get in tune, more present with your body when you have a hormonal IUD that results in no menstruation?
Ooh, this is a really good question. And I find that the hormonal IUD is really, really interesting because some people are actually still ovulating when they're on the hormonal IUD, but the hormonal IUD works to also thin the lining of your uterus so you don't bleed, so there's nothing to bleed. And so the first thing I would do is start tracking your basal body temperature, as well as just tracking your life because you don't necessarily have a cycle, but
Right.
tracking to see if there are any patterns that you're experiencing every month. Like, are you still experiencing PMS and you're just like going through life not knowing? And so I would track my basal body temperature because if you are ovulating, your temperature should rise about zero point 0.4 to 1 degree and stay up for about 2 weeks after ovulation. So that would be the first thing that I would do. Um, because then you would maybe know where you are at a little bit more. But some people don't ovulate as well on the hormonal IUD. So you really just have to figure out for yourself. But on the other hand, if you don't want to do that, um, one way to work with your cycle and to be more in tune with this cyclical nature, it may sound a little woo woo, but is to work with the phases of the moon instead. So, treating the new moon as your menstrual phase and the full moon as your ovulatory phase, to just kind of lean into that cyclical nature because our menstrual cycle is really similar to the seasons and the moon. And so we can kind of tap into that. But at the end of the day, I really recommend everyone, whether you are on a hormonal IUD or not, to ask yourself this question every morning: what do I need today? Um, and then give that to yourself because it's going to help you tune into how you are feeling, what you need, knowing that it's going to be different every day. Um, and I think that's just a really powerful question to ask.
Yeah, that is so good. I know I've seen you share about tracking your temperature on your stories, and you were comparing the Aura Ring versus an actual thermometer.
Mhm.
Do you mind sharing your findings on that information, please?
Yes, the findings of this, my Aura Ring versus my temperature. Okay, so backstory, for everyone listening, I've been using my Aura Ring for about a year, but so what you do is Aura Ring records your temperature and then you put it into natural cycles. But I was looking at my temperatures and being like, am I like, because my temperatures were very erratic. They were going up and down when they're not supposed to be. And I was just very confused. Like, am I experiencing like a big hormonal imbalance or like what's going on? And so I decided to go back to my thermometer. So I'm doing both right now. Um, and it's really interesting because the thermometer, I'm not having those ups and downs, crazy
Hmm.
variation. It's very, because like in your follicular phase, like you're gonna have like go up and down, but it's gonna be pretty consistent and consistently lower in your pre-ovulatory or your follicular phase. And then once you ovulate, your temperature is gonna rise and it's gonna stay up. And so it's been interesting. I'm gonna continue to do it for a couple of cycles. But I don't know. My Oura ring is not giving me the temperatures that accurately, and it's a bit harder for me to read my chart.
When you use a thermometer, you have to do it like first thing when you wake up before moving, correct?
Exactly. So like my alarm goes off, I grab my temper or my thermometer, put it under my tongue. Sometimes I fall back asleep and like because like your thermometer will like lock in that temperature. So even if you fall back asleep, it'll if you turn it back on, you'll see that temperature. and then you just put it in. But yeah, you have to have, if we're tracking your temperature with a thermometer, you have to have at least 3 to 5 hours of sleep, no alcohol, but that's the same with Aura. Um, and yeah, around the same time every day.
Cool. And so for someone who is trying to get more in tune and more present with their body, it's cool because you have both options. Obviously, the Aura Ring is a couple hundred, but then the thermometer.
Well, it's like 20, 15, $20.
And it sounds like the thermometer might be working better for you. So
Yeah,
it
yeah, I
doesn't have to
don't
be
know.
expensive.
Yeah, it's just it's a funny little experiment that I'm doing, but um yeah, the Oura ring will just give me some temperatures that are like very out of the ordinary, while the thermometer is not doing that.
What do you wish all menstruators knew when it comes to their cycle?
Ooh, good question. Um, I wish that all menstruators knew just how much our menstrual cycles impacted our life. Our menstrual cycle impacts our mood, our energy, our productivity, our creativity, our desire, our literal appearance. And so when we can understand how our cycle impacts us through tracking our cycle, we can gain so much insight into our unique rhythm. And then we can actually start to see our menstrual cycle as this powerful tool, um, for self compassion, for personal growth, for advocating for ourselves. And from there, we can really begin to befriend our bodies and our cycle.
For that, how much of our cycle does one need to track to kind of like get an understanding of all of it?
Like, what do you mean? Like every day, or
So,
like what should we be paying attention to?
yeah, so when it comes to like understanding how much it impacts our life and
Mhm.
like our creativity and everything, is there like a journal or would it just be like tracking your temperatures or all of your symptoms every day kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I find that the more data, the better. The like most simple thing you can do is literally in your notes app at the day one of your period, give yourself 1 to 3 words about how you're feeling that day. And then every day go on and you do that every month and you're going to start to see patterns like, oh, on day 6, I start to feel really good. Or on day 4, ooh, I feel anxious most of the time. That kind of thing. And you can start to actually use your menstrual cycle as that tool instead of just kind of following generic information. But yeah, I would definitely maybe journal. I have a tracking spreadsheet that I love, and I've the freebie you can get like at my link in bio. Um, and that it's a spreadsheet. Basically, you just write like how you're feeling every day, your energy, and any symptoms that come up. And so it's really cool because it's a spreadsheet, you get to see like an entire year, like, and the days are across. So like month 1 and then month 2 and then all the way across. So it's really, really helpful.
I will link that in the show notes because that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I did have a bonus question, and it was just thinking about how I think also one of the ways that our menstrual cycle can impact our body image is the way we describe our menstrual cycle. So, like for me, I called my period gross and disgusting
Ooh.
for so many years. And hence, I'm calling myself gross and disgusting at
Mhm.
least a week every single month for years. And
Mhm.
I know others may call it like inconvenient, whatever the word may be. How do you view your period and how maybe would you recommend viewing it?
Oh, that's a good question. How do I so my period in specifically, or my menstrual cycle in general?
Period, I think.
I mean, I just call it what it is. I'm menstruating, or I'm on my period, but I'm menstruating. Um, and I kind of view it as a time for self-care and compassion. And of course, I've already mentioned this, but it's like a portal. It's a portal to your intuition, to your um, higher self, if you want to say that. Um, and it's really an invitation for you to really um, be bold and to care for yourself.
Mhm. I think for myself, like one of the reasons why I thought it was gross and disgusting is because I personally don't want kids. And so I'm like, what's the point in it? It's like, if I'm
Hmm.
going through this every single month, what the heck am I doing this for? Or I'm being forced into it.
Mm.
But one of the things that helped me see it differently was seeing it as like my fifth vital sign.
Exactly.
And
Mhm.
so it's cool how it's like you can see it as self-care, you can see it as a fifth sign of health, you can see it just as neutral, like it just
It just
is. It just
happens.
is what my body wants to do.
Yeah, yeah, it's a indicator of your overall health and well-being, and it's a messenger, of your body kind of saying, "Hey, like, something's happening here," or, "Hey, you need to care for yourself," or whatever it is. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, well, thank you for all of this because again, it's such an uncomfortable topic for so many. So hopefully, listening to this, you're like, okay, at least I can hang out with Kate and Leah and I feel comfortable with them. So that's good. But to finish, I have two questions that I ask all of my guests. And the first one is, what do you wish you could go back and tell younger Kate?
Oh my goodness. I think back to my younger self and, oh, I just wanna give her a hug. But, the thing that I wish I could go back and tell young me is that my body is the least interesting thing about me. Like, I am so much there's so much greatness and so much wisdom and compassion and care, and my body is really not all that important in the grand scheme of things.
I mean, uh, so good. So good. If only more of us could learn that growing up, it would be so helpful.
Mhm.
The second question is, what advice would you give to someone who is just starting out to try and learn to love their body more?
I mean, to give yourself grace and compassion, and time. It can be a really hard and long journey, and we're not always gonna feel good about ourselves, but if we can even shift to more body neutrality, and, um just give ourselves time and grace and trying all of the tools that we need to, as I know for me with therapy and all of the things I needed to help heal my relationship to myself. Um, yeah, just time and grace.
Yeah, it's not an overnight thing. And I think that's a really important thing to remind them of. It's going to take time and it's okay that it takes time. It didn't take you one day to hate your body, it took you a lot of days to not like how you look and to not feel great. So it might take a lot of days to flip that mindset, but it's
Mm.
okay because it's totally possible and you can do
Mhm,
it.
mhm.
For those listening, how can they work with you? You have the Cyclical Baddies group.
Uh-huh, yes. So of course I have one-on-one coaching where I help people track their ovulation and their menstrual cycle for to avoid pregnancy or to achieve pregnancy naturally. But then I also have the Cyclical Baddies Club, which is an online membership slash co-working space for women and menstruators who want to carve their own path without sacrificing their physical, their mental, and their menstrual well-being. So it's a really amazing community and space for us to experiment with cyclical living together.
That sounds so cool. And
Yeah.
again, just it's so nice to hear about these things existing because it's like these are the things that we need.
Uh-huh.
It's like these are the things we should have been taught in high school, right?
Uh-huh. And snaps to that.
Yeah. So I will link all of that in the show notes below. So if you're interested in checking it out, just scroll down. The links will be clickable. But again, thank you so much for creating this safe space for us today. And if you listening have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to us.
Mhm.
We are more than happy to answer your TMI questions. And yeah, just thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks so much.
Of course. All right. And just remember that your body is not the problem.